The cash influx in the Technology Modernization Fund should help agencies accelerate digital transformation efforts. Keeping the momentum going after the pandemic's over could be more of a challenge, though. Rear Admiral Danelle Barrett, U.S. Navy retired, former Deputy CIO of the Navy and former Director of Current Operations at U.S. Cyber Command. She's author of Rock the Boat, Embrace Change, Encourage Innovation, and Be a Successful Leader. Danelle, welcome. Thanks very much for coming on. Is the track in the military regarding digital transformation different than the civilian agencies, do you think? Or are the organizations pursuing the concepts the same ways?
I think conceptually they're pursuing the concepts the same way. I think, of course, the Department of Defense has a significantly higher budget than some of the agencies that are smaller and don't have the resources to do the kind of large-scale innovation modernization at speed that the military and the DoD are doing. And agencies like the Department of Homeland Security, which got significant bump ups in the relief packages that were signed recently by Congress. So a lot of money went in, particularly to the cybersecurity piece of that. Because as you know, with the remote workers, you have a whole host of now different cybersecurity challenges with people having their own devices and trying to access information in the cloud potentially now, and things that didn't used to happen when you worked in the perimeter of your network. Network security is no longer based on your perimeter. It's based on who you are and what information you need and where that is. So it's a completely different parameter.
I mentioned the Technology Modernization Fund at the beginning of our conversation, Admiral. It's striking to me, I went down last night over the list of projects that the TMF is funding. I've never heard any defense organizations that have looked at tapping that fund. Is that a statement about the fund? Is that a statement about the amount of money that organizations already have, as you just alluded to? Or is it just coincidence, do you think?
I would suspect it's more education related. I mean, there's a lot of funds out there that people, I'm surprised when I find out they don't know about them, or they don't know about things that have been done in acquisition to make it easier for people to spend money, particularly on technology, and particularly when you can beta test it and then transition it to a longer term capability. And so they've been trying in recent years, particularly in DoD, to speed up those acquisition processes because technology is moving at an exponentially accelerating rate, and our acquisition processes were made for buying ships and things like that, things that will take years and years to build. So probably in the last 10 years, they've really been trying to eat around the edges and make some changes to those acquisition rules to make it easier to do that digital modernization. But we still need more work there and more education on what the art of the possible is with what is existing.
What's your sense of how to scale that eating around the edges, Danelle? What does somebody who has to do what, I guess, in order to scale that?
Well, to scale it from the acquisition perspective, and I'm not an acquisition expert, okay, but what I would tell you is that you need to focus on, first, the Navy does or the DoD does, on what are those projects that are most important and most impactful for us. So, for example, one of the things that the DoD is doing now is moving to a zero trust cybersecurity environment. That requires different infrastructure, different tools, different capabilities. And so when I say eating around the edges, okay, so let's find then those avenues where we have done some acquisition reform that will allow us to modernize very quickly for that zero trust environment, which we really need to address the remote work and everything that's happened with Corona, particularly, but it allows that speed of transformation. But pick those capabilities that are the most important, most impactful, go after those first and find those avenues where you can spend the money faster to get that capability fielded.
The Pentagon obviously had to drive tremendous change in a very short period of time to move people to remote work, to telework at the beginning of the pandemic. And that has driven, not just in the department, all across the government, tremendous speed into the technology acquisition realm. What keeps that momentum after the pandemic? What would help people to resist the temptation to say, okay, we're back to normal, so we'll go back to normal processes?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to take leadership that says we're not going to do that, that horse is out of the barn, we're not going to go back to that. And where we had temporary things in place to give us relief, to allow those processes to change, that's where we need to make those permanent, or even make them better than they are. Even the changes that they have made, make them more aggressive. I mean, when you look at the kind of expansion that we had, DISA, for example, added 63 new circuits and hundreds of megabits of new data available during the pandemic. The Army increased virtual private network capacity, by 300%. They added 1 million new accounts to do commercial virtual remote, which is your Teams, your Microsoft Teams environment, your collaborative environment for DoD people in 1 month. I mean, that kind of progress was unheard of prior to that. And so let's take those lessons and institutionalize them now, and don't allow the forces of evil and institutional inertia and resistance, which I say, my favorite friends in the Pentagon, those two, don't allow those forces to get back on the wagon. Just don't do it, you know.
You mentioned CVR, and one of the things that I think is an encouraging sign is that the Pentagon's already thinking about what's next after CVR. It's not like, well, we've transitioned to this, so we're going to keep this for a while. They recognize it was a temporary solution, it was necessary, it was fine for the purpose that it served, but they're ready to move on. Am I reading maybe too much into that, or is that indeed a positive sign in your view?
Yeah, I do think it's a positive sign, because you want to have competition and collaboration. You don't want necessarily one company or one product or one something to be the be all end all, because everybody has different requirements. And so this was perfect to get out to do the remote work that we needed to do, and to continue to function as a government and as a military, you know, because we have a whole bunch of people that aren't necessarily on a ship. They're sitting ashore supporting those people on a ship, and they need to stay engaged and be at work, right? Whether their fanny is at home or their fanny is at work. And that collaboration certainly helps. Plus with you know, this is not the last pandemic we're going to have. This is not the last situation that we're going to have where people need to be more mobile. The world and the trend in IT and technology is focused on the user and the mobility of the user and the security of the user and authenticating a user and making sure they can get to information wherever they need it. And so that trend will continue, and the government sees that, which is why they've looked at, okay, like, how do we figure out what the best collaborative environment is in the future? And that's constantly going to be an upgrading, moving target. So you won't see like, hey, I'm going to pick a collaboration software and have it for 15 years. Absolutely not. That's just not what happens in industry. That's not what happens in the world. And so the government needs to adapt their models to similarly leverage those great capabilities that the commercial industry provides.
Danelle Barrett, new books, Rock the Boat, Embrace Change, Encourage Innovation, Be a Successful Leader. Congratulations on that. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much.